The evening sky hung low over Willow Creek, painting the little town in shades of orange and quiet. The streets were nearly empty, except for one figure sitting on the old wooden bench near the bakery, an elderly woman, silver hair tucked under a faded blue scarf, hands resting on a worn leather purse. Her name was Clara May, the kind of person who looked like she'd lived 1,000 stories but never rushed to tell. Every evening she sat there. Same bench, same gentle smile, watching people pass by. Some waved, some didn't, but everyone knew her as the woman who never seemed sad. That day, though, someone finally stopped. A young woman, eyes red from crying, clutching a grocery bag that had nothing in it but a single loaf of bread. Clara looked up, smiled softly, and said, "Long day, sweetheart?" The young woman hesitated, then nodded. And in that quiet moment, beneath the golden sky of a tired town, a conversation began that would change both their lives. The young woman's name was Rachel Carter. She looked barely 30, but her eyes had the exhaustion of someone twice that age. "My husband left for the city 3 months ago," she said quietly. "He promised he'd send money. But nothing's come. My kids are hungry. I don't even know how long this bread will last." Her voice cracked at the end, and she turned her face away, ashamed of the tears that came too easily. Clara didn't interrupt. She just listened, the kind of listening that didn't need words. When Rachel finally looked back, Clara's eyes met hers, calm, steady, kind. "Tell me something," Clara asked softly. "When you wake up each morning, what's the first thing you tell yourself?" Rachel frowned, confused. "I don't know. I guess I just think about what could go wrong next." Clara smiled faintly, almost like she already knew the answer. "That's the thing about thoughts, dear," she said. "They're like seeds. You can't plant fear and expect peace to grow." The wind carried the scent of cinnamon from the bakery. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang, and Rachel just sat there, wondering what Clara really meant. Something about those words, seeds, peace, fear, stayed with her long after she went home. Days passed, but Rachel couldn't shake Clara's words. You can't plant fear and expect peace to grow. They played in her head each morning as she stared at the empty coffee jar, the unpaid bills, the quiet room where her children slept close together for warmth. One gray afternoon, she walked back to Willow Creek. And there she was, Clara May, sitting on that same bench, feeding crumbs to a few pigeons who seemed to know her well. Rachel sat beside her without a word. For a while, they just listened to the soft rush of the creek and the sound of wind brushing against the willows. Finally, Clara spoke. "You remind me of someone I once knew," she said, "a woman who thought her life was over because everything she loved was gone." Rachel looked at her. "What happened to her?" Clara smiled, gentle but distant. "She learned that when the world gives you nothing, you still have your thoughts. And your thoughts? They can rebuild everything." Rachel frowned. Did she really believe that? Clara looked toward the sunset, eyes shining like she saw something far beyond it. "She didn't just believe it, dear. She proved it." Something in her tone, half truth, half memory, made Rachel's heart ache with questions. Who was that woman Clara spoke of? And why did it sound like she wasn't talking about someone else at all? The next morning, Rachel did something different. Before opening her eyes, she whispered, "Today will be a good day." It felt awkward, untrue even, but she said it anyway. She made breakfast from what little she had, walked her kids to school, and smiled at the mailman for the first time in weeks. Nothing magical happened. No letter, no money, no miracle. But something small had changed. The heaviness in her chest loosened, just a little. And for the first time in months, she noticed how the sunlight fell on the porch, how the breeze carried the scent of lilacs. That evening, she walked by the creek again, but Clara's bench was empty. Only a folded note sat there, tucked under a smooth river stone. It said, "Keep planting good seeds, Rachel. The roots grow even when you can't see them." Rachel pressed the note to her heart and smiled through tears. She didn't know it yet, but her life had already started to change. A week later, the mail finally came. Inside the worn envelope was a letter from Rachel's husband. He'd found work, steady pay, and was coming home soon. Rachel cried, but this time they were tears of relief, not fear. She ran to Willow Creek to tell Clara the news. But when she reached the bench, someone else was sitting there, an older man reading the newspaper. "Excuse me," Rachel said. "Do you know where Clara May went?" He looked up, surprised. "Clara May? Oh, honey. She passed away last winter. Been gone nearly a year now." Rachel froze. The bench, the note, the smile. Every word Clara had said came rushing back like a warm tide through her heart. Maybe she hadn't met a stranger. Maybe she'd met a memory. One that stayed to remind her what hope could look like. Rachel sat down, looked at the quiet creek and whispered, "Thank you, Clara." And for the first time in a long time, the town of Willow Creek didn't feel lonely anymore. Sometimes the people who change our lives aren't meant to stay. They appear like whispers of light, just long enough to remind us that hope still lives inside us. Clara's words stayed with Rachel, but they also belong to anyone who's ever felt lost. Your thoughts are the seeds of your tomorrow. Plant them with care. So if you're listening, right now, maybe this story found you for a reason. Take a deep breath. Think one good thought. That's how change begins. And if it touched your heart, share it with someone who might need a little light today.